Again, my name is Allie Noakes, and most of you we've been emailing back and forth, especially over the database questions. And we're going to talk a little bit this morning about newsletters. You will have Greg and John that will give you a lot of insight into what to put in a newsletter as far as your articles and your fundraising ideas. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning is basically on the structure of your newsletter. If you'll see, we have some newsletter essentials, and these are things that must be on our newsletters. Your name, for one. You would be surprised how many newsletters I get that does not have their name on it, and I'm like, who is this from? So you want to make sure that you do include your name, your first and last name. I know all your donors and your supporters know who you are, but if they share that letter with a Sunday school class, with a group, with someone, one of their friends, and they let them have that letter, then your name's not on there. So you want to make sure that your name is on there so that they know when they share it, who they're sharing. And also, if the print letters, I know a lot of times that we put them on our refrigerators, or we put them in a special place on a bulletin board. And as you walk by, my daughter tells me, when I walk by, I know I need to pray for these people today. And it's just a reminder. It keeps you up in front in their prayers. So that's a good way. Make sure your name is on that letter. Ideally, it's great to have it on the front in the header if you possibly can. If not, put it on the back. Put it down. Don't put it in little tiny point font. Put it out there big enough that they see who it's from. Include your picture with it if you want. That's always a great idea. I can remember your face probably more than I will remember your name. So that's a great idea, putting those two together. You also want to make sure the giving information. How can they give now that they want to support you? And if you'll look at the bottom, this is some of our way that we include our giving information. A lot of times this goes at the bottom of your newsletter, but you can put it anywhere you want to. But this is always include the Global Outreach website and how they can give. They can either give, this missionary or project search, or Blake will give you a page, an address to your page on the website, and you can include that. They can go directly to your page, click on donate, but you always want to include that. You also want to include our mailing address, because we get about probably 60% of our donations come in checks. So we want to make sure that mailing address is included on there so they know where to mail that letter to. And then your phone number. You've all gotten the phone number. We've talked a little bit about how important that phone number is. That phone number on everything you send out. If you send out an email, you want to make sure that phone number is down there below your name. If you send out a letter or a prayer card, you want to make sure you always have your phone number on there. That's how all the donations come in, and they all go through that phone number. So that's really important. The other things we want to make sure we have on there are the GO logos and the ECFA logo. And make sure when you put them on there and we print it, that it's large enough for them to see, that it's not just a little tiny thing at the blurb at the bottom of the letter, that you make it a good size, not huge, but a good size that they can easily see it and know, hey, they're with Global Outreach. And the ECFA is just our 501c that shows that we are accredited and we are accountable for our financial. So you want to make sure that that's always on there. And I have sent you these logos. If not, they're on the links that you have that you were sent for MOT. And if for some reason you don't have them, just send me an email and I'll be glad to send this information to you. We also want to talk about the printing of the newsletter and what goes into it. When you're typing your newsletters and you want to put a lot into that newsletter, you tend to want to make it tinier font. We go down from 14 to 12 to 10. I need to put more in there. Let's make it 8-point font, until it's almost impossible to read when you print all of that out, especially if you have a lot of type. So the best type is a 12-point font. A 10-point works great, but a 12-point is the idea. And I would really suggest that you stay away from the script. tight font, it's harder to read when you print it out, and it tends to blur altogether. If you use the script and you want to use it in a header or a subheader, and you're using a larger 16-point font, it works great. Use it sparingly, but don't make your whole article in script because it is a lot harder to read. Your line spacing, when you're doing an article and you have single space and it's a longer article, it's harder to read. If you put that little bit of white space in there where it's a 1.5 or 1.25 between the sentences, it's just a lot clearer and it looks a lot better. You also want to stay in your font colors. If you stay in the darker colors, they print well. When you go to the lighter font, like a light yellow or light peach, and it looks great on the screen, it's not going to print out. So we kind of stay away from those colors. We do not print what we call full bleed, which is from edge to edge on paper. There's always a margin around our paper when it prints. So make sure when you're designing your letter that you leave that little bit of margin around it. 0.25 margin is perfect, but just leave that little bit around it because it will cut off when we print it. The real important thing is your paper size. I know a lot of people that are overseas will use, they call it a European letter size, which is a little longer than the US letter size, as you can see here. So for you, when you print it out, it prints perfect. But we're going to print it out on this 8.5 by 11 paper, so it's going to cut off the bottom. So make sure when you design your letter, you make sure, oh, I've got to have this on this certain size. If there's any way you can print your letter out before you send it to me, you can see then what it's going to look like. Do know that the print colors from every computer, every printer is going to be a little bit different. So what you're seeing as a blue, it may print out here as a little more purple. But those things are not that big a deal, but we want to make sure that we get pretty close on the colors you're wanting to use. The length of the paper, we want to do, we print all newsletters front and back. If it's a 2-page letter, it's going to be printed on the front and on the back, and that saves on your expense. If it's a 4-page letter, then it'll wind up being 2 pages front and back. I would say 90% of my newsletters come in as 2 pages, and that's printed 1 sheet front and back. I have a few that are 4 pages, not that many, but that makes them front and back. And then I have some that are just 1 page. And don't think that the length of the letter is going to make it more appealing to anyone. I have a missionary in Haiti who raises funds and has wonderful supporters. He does a 1-page newsletter every month. He never fails, but it's always 1 page. It's always in the same type. It's always laid out the same, 1 article with a lot of great pictures. And he does extremely well on his fundraising, and he doesn't have to get elaborate on getting a designer to design it and making it great, because a 1-page letter will work as well as a 2-page or a 4-page if it's designed well and if the articles are compelling. Color blocking, if you're familiar with that, that is something that we want to really take note of. As you can see here, the one well, I guess it's on your left too, my left, you can see it's all blue with different color blues. This is one of the first letters that this missionary did, and it was really hard to read. And when it printed out, it was really, really not well done. So I took her 2nd page and took all the blue out, and this is what we came up with. And you can see the difference in the clarity of the font and the clarity of what you can read, the pictures. So think about it. Using some color is great, but don't feel that you have to fill the whole page with color, because it just doesn't work. You can use smaller blocks of color as long as you have some white space. And this is what I'm talking about with the white space. It's just going to be easier on the eyes. It's going to be easier to read. It's going to look cleaner. And when someone's looking at that, they're like, oh, I really want to read the rest of it. Now, if you guys have any questions, jump right in there and tell me. interrupt me because I'll be glad to stop and answer anything you want to talk about. Because normally I have my books and I give you my newsletter books and you get to look through them, and sadly, since you're not here, you're not seeing all the different designs that we have in a newsletter. When you do design your newsletter, you may want to carry that whole design for a year. Maybe you get one design you really like and, oh, I want to use this every time. Most of our missionaries will do that. Maybe they redesign it at the first of every year. Sometimes it's a different type of letter every time I sent one. But it's all in your style, what you want to do and how much time you want to spend in it. If you want to just do a strictly black and white letter style, that's fine too. You don't have to have all the pictures. The pictures are great. The pictures can really tell the story, but you don't have to have all the pictures in it if you don't want them. The one thing I would say more than anything is stay away from the 3 columns. This is a newspaper style print and it's real hard to read. You get short sentences. You're limited to on where you can put your pictures. They don't work well in this type of letter. The Guinea Pig Gazette comes in for the last 5 years exactly the same. She's never changed it. It works for her, but it is a hard letter to edit and it's a hard letter to read. So think about it when you're making that. It just makes it a little awkward in your words and in your sentence spacing.
Allie?
Yes.
I just wanted to mention to everybody, we can upload your presentation if that's okay with you to our Facebook group. So if people want to come back and reference anything, is that okay with you, Allie?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Okay, so these will be posted. So if you don't want to have to worry about taking notes, they'll be out there for you later.
Yeah, that's great. They'll be out there. The other thing is the pictures. As you can see, our wonderful little office staff is up there. This was our Christmas picture. And you want to make sure you have some really great pictures. Someone told me one time, if you can see the teeth and eyes in a picture, then you've got a wonderful picture to put on your letter. Make sure that you scale it correctly. Don't pull it from side to side. You want to pull it from the corners, because if you stretch it, then you've got some tall, skinny people or some short, squatty people. And if you want it to fit in a certain little area, consider putting a border around it or placing it in a color block, but don't stretch the picture. Let's try to not do that. The other thing is trying to name everyone in a picture. You're going to get someone's name wrong. It's going to be misspelled. You're going to leave someone out. So it's better just to, if you've had a team come over to work with you, just say this team from, this one says First Church in Greenwood came over and this is what they did. I always refer to what they did, not what you did, how they raised the money and what they came over and did, because it's a lot better than putting all the names in there that no one really will read them all, but the people that are in that particular picture. Now, if you'll look at this picture above, you can't see it as well, but if you go to this, you can see it much better. And a large picture in your group, in your newsletter, will just look a lot better than a lot of little small collage of pictures. And think about that when you're doing it, because a picture can really tell the story. You put a great caption under that picture, and it can be, the caption can be your article. It could be 3 or 4 sentences and basically hitting on what they did, and you can have a really great picture. You see all of us here. I won't name everybody, but that is the office staff. Now we'll take a look inside just a little bit. And this is our art. Now art is ask, reply, thank. Ask, report, thank, I'm sorry. And that is something Greg will probably talk with you about in the fundraising, is the ask, report, thank letters. And when you understand that, you'll understand how you want to go about on your fundraising. But most of the time, you want to think about how much can I take away and not how much more can I add. If you're thinking about, you get a newsletter in, think of writing to your grandmother. Think of writing to an 8th grader. Think of writing to someone who's going to quickly look at that letter, and they want to read it. But if it's written like a book, they're not going to read word for word of it. So you want to make sure that you have information in there that they're going to want to hear. You want to tell what their donors did. People connect to people much better than they connect to a project. So if you can connect one person in that project, one child in that project, one individual that you're telling the story about, and it doesn't have to be every detail, but connect them to that one person, this is what you accomplished. You know, this is with your support, this is what you did. And that's something that really compels people to want to help donate to you. Because if you just write something like, I supported a missionary with this organization and they did something with orphans in Africa. If they remember that story well, then they're going to say who they supported, what, that they were with Global Outreach and what exactly they did in Africa with the training program on aged out orphans in Africa. And they can tell your story over again, much better. You want to always let the donor know what happened with the support that they gave. So that's something that when you think about your articles, as you go through the month, you might want to jot down some notes. As things happen, take great pictures. You always have your phone with you. Mine doesn't take that great pictures, but maybe yours does, and you can take some awesome shots and always have those and write down, take some notes on your phone that these things happen and I want to tell about this when I sit down to write. Because you don't have to sit down and say, oh, I got this big letter, I've got to write this whole big thing. Just write from the heart and write from what God led you to do, what God led these supporters to do, and how all of this interacted together. And you will have a great newsletter. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a 4-page letter. It can be a 1-page letter, or it can be 4. We don't usually ask you to do more than that ever, because most of the time I'll ask you to try to cut it down, because of more than 4 pages, it's just overwhelming to a donor to get that much in the mail. So if you can stick it to a 2-page newsletter, that is like most of what missionaries do, but some do the 1 page and it works well. And you're going to say, well, I already do an email letter, I don't do a print letter. We have found, and Greg can verify all of this, we have found that the print people who do print letters, the missionaries who do the print letters, really have more response from donors than the missionaries who do email letters. If you get a long email letter, most people are looking at it on their phone and they may not read it all. It's great to do the updates. Every other week, do an update on email and keep it short and simple. Include a great picture, but don't go into long articles on it. If you have a website, if you have a blog, always let them know they can read more about the story on your blog, more about the story on your webpage, and put that link in there with it. But updating them every couple of weeks in an e-letter is great. Every month in an e-letter is great, but that print letter is what you really need to do. And that is one thing that actually you will find that Global requires you to write a quarterly letter once a quarter. And we send that out for you, and that is that hard copy that they can share. It's hard to share email, but they can share that hard copy letter with their groups and their friends. So all the letters that you do, you want to make sure, even in your emails, make sure they have the Global logos on the bottom of it. It's always great. Have your country. I didn't mention that in the first one, but if you always want to have the country where your ministry is, and maybe if you're ministering under a different name, your ministry is called something else, put that in your letter also. The more information you give them that they can connect with you, the better it is. We want to also know that all the letters are sent here and we review them, we proof them. We make sure that they're printed out perfectly, and then we send it over. We have an outsourced printer. I used to have to print and stuff everything that came through, and now we have a printer that I'll send them over to. And usually within 5 days of receiving your letter, it's normally out. There are occasions when that may be less time. There are occasions when that may be a little more time, like around Christmas. But normally a 5-day turnaround on your letter is pretty standard. So you see my email address here. You want to send all the letters to that. If you do email updates, please add me to your emails and let me know what's going on with you. And that way I know how to pray for you. I know how to update people, and I know what's going on in your ministry and in your life. And never hesitate just to email us and say, hey, I need some help with this, because we're all here. If I don't know the answer to that question, I'm going to find somebody in the office. I'm going to give it to Maria because she knows everything. And I'll send it over to her and say, hey, we need an answer to this. So Maria's awesome. The cost of a newsletter is charged to your missionary account. And I'm sure Marla has probably talked to you that, or will talk to you about that. I send all the letters out, the charges go over to her, and everything comes out of your ministry account. Make sure you budget this in your budget when you go to set that up, because this is not, you don't want it to be a surprise. Oh, I forgot to put my newsletters in there and my postage in there. I've kind of done, this is based on 200 copies of a letter going out. This is a 2-page letter printed front and back in color. Will run you $71. If it's a black and white 2-page, it's $41. And then the postage runs between 17 cents and 18 cents a letter. Now, that's if you have 200 letters, and that's why we ask you to try to get the 200 names. You have 150 letters, it's going to cost you 50 cents to mail them out. So if you have 200, and always have more than 200, because if one comes back with the wrong address, it shuts you down to 199. But we try to get that letter out. If I get a letter they only have 150 names on their mailing list, but someone else sends me one that has 200, and I can combine those into a mailing, then I will, and I'll save you that 50 cents, and it'll go down to 17 cents. All of that, of course, again, is taken out of your ministry account. And it's up to you whether you want to do it in it. I have one missionary who does a letter. He includes lots of pictures, and they're great, but he wants it printed in black and white. And so I do that, and it's a little cheaper to print it in black and white. It's not as compelling, but it is a nice letter. It's printed in black and white. It saves him money, and it still gets everything out there because he does great articles. Any questions? Anybody awake? Yeah, Greg?
Just to see, does I understand right, that missionaries are required to write regular newsletters by email, but quarterly also to send paper letter to be sent to the ministry partners?
They're not quite required to write them by email. That was just, I know a lot of people do. The sending out by email is not a requirement, but our policy does state that we would like for you to do a printed letter once a quarter. And I know, and that's, we don't have a requirement on the email letters. You can do that as often as you want or not at all. That's up to you. Yes. Fernando.
So what we need to do is to send you the PDF of the letter in the format, because I already do with another company, but of course I will start doing with you guys. But the way I used to do is that I send the PDF and you guys print that out, and then you're gonna send, what is this? I understand the donation envelope, which goes with my code and everything, so people can respond. And the promise insert, what is that? Is a paper they fill up their data, or what is that?
the promise insert, and I don't I'll get you a copy of it, but this, if you can see this, this is the promise insert. And this just states that Global Outreach promises to give, we give 100% of any donation that comes into you to you, that we take none of it. And that is what this promise insert is about. That about once every couple of quarters, we may change this up and it'll look a little bit different every time. But one of these goes into your newsletters every time it's mailed. Anything I mail for you, one of these will go into it. Your letter, the little promise insert, and also this is our donation. And I'm sorry I didn't put these on the PDF, but this is our donation envelope that will go into every letter. It gives them the chance to fill out information on the back, and it's already pre-addressed to us. They can just put their check in it and mail it to us. And each one of those goes into every letter that you mail out. Any other? One thing that we also do is called a new donor brochure. As you get new donors in, and of course this will be the first time we get donors. They may not be new to you, but they're new giving through Global. Then we send out a little brochure that also has information about the 100% promise. It has information about Global, who we are, what we do, and how we work with you. And all of your donors will get that letter the first time they make a donation. It's not, if they're on the list and they haven't made a donation, they don't get that little brochure. But as you add people to your ministry partners, then they get that brochure, and it just lets them know who we are and why you're with us. And so it's a little information about Global. We also encourage you to do thank you cards. I don't know if you do these yet, but every donation that comes into you, you should really do a handwritten thank you card. If that's not possible, if you have, I know mail between countries is really hard. If you have, I don't know if they've talked to you about your Barnabas team yet or not, but if you have someone, that's a good use of your Barnabas team. If you can say, hey, can you mail these from the US? These, I have 60 donors this month, and here they are, here's their addresses. Send it to them in a little Excel spreadsheet, and you can tell them what to write, but they can write those little letters for you. It's a great help to you, and it gets mailed from here. So there's always ways. If you do an email thank you, that's really better than not doing one. But every donation that comes into you, I really encourage you to do a thank you letter. To get that handwritten letter in the mail that nobody does anymore is really awesome. So that is just one of the things I would encourage you to do. And you can get, if you don't have a Barnabas team here, if you have just a friend or a family member that can help you with that, that would be great, awesome. Or if you want to put them, I have a missionary, I have two in Ecuador, one in Zambia, but they'll send me a box every month that will have their cards already handwritten, addressed in that box, and they send it to me and I mail it out from here. So there's lots of ways that you can do this, and I'll be glad to do that for you. And then the postage just gets charged to you, but I'll be glad to help you on that too. And they never fail. These missionaries do it every month. How many of you do printed newsletters now? Does anyone? Fernando? Emily? If you do, you mentioned, Fernando, that you did newsletters through someone else. If you know, we would love to do the newsletters for you, but if you should send out something that's printed by someone else, please make sure you add me to your mailing list so that I can get a copy of that. We love to know that you are doing this, and again, keeping up with your ministry and how we can pray for you and just different ways that we can do things for you. So I always make sure that we're included. Probably Bob or Michelle would like to be included on the emails that you send out, especially your updates. If you can do that, include one or both of them on there. They both like to keep up with you, and I'm sure they'll talk to you about that. But those three, if you can send it to us three, that would be great. Are there any other questions before we go into?
I have one question.
Sure.
So until now, I was using like Mailchimp. So when I was sending the newsletter, if I'm start now to doing this, when we're gonna start to do this, so which program we use actually, the publisher, to make these letters?
You can do Publisher, you can do Word, you can do, there's one called Lucid Print, and Lucid Print is a good online designer that is free. And I have a couple of missionaries that use that program, and they do awesome letters with it. There's a lot, if you want to Google, a lot of different newsletter programs that are free. They're free up to a point, and then they're, of course, as you go up in your design, they may cost you. But any of them that you do, just save it in a PDF style and send it to me. Because in a PDF, I can make minor corrections in that. And then if there's something that I cannot do, I'll send it back to you and ask you to make the corrections on it. Yes. Amanda.
Do you also send prayer cards and Christmas cards? Could you do that?
Yes. Christmas, I send out a lot of Christmas cards. Just in that month, I'll probably send out 30,000. It seems like in just the month. If you send me, like if you go on Vistaprint or Snapfish or whatever you use to have your cards printed, you print your cards or you have them printed and sent directly to me with the envelopes. We'll take care of sending all of that out. I don't print cards here. So you get them printed by an online printer, have them sent to me, and we send them out to your ministry partners. And we have them, stuff, whether they're cards, folding cards. The ones that are like postcards that will go inside an envelope are a lot easier to deal with than the ones that open up. Some people will just do a Christmas letter rather than doing a Christmas card. They'll design it as a Christmas letter, and we'll send that out. Every letter that goes out will have, if you can see this, will have your name at the bottom. Can you see that? This says newsletter from your name, Global Outreach Missionary. And at Christmas, we put Merry Christmas from your name, a Global Outreach Missionary. So we can send out any kind of cards that you want to send out. If you do make prayer cards and you send them to me and you say, hey, I want to include this in my October letter, then we can make your letter and we can put your prayer cards in that letter. Just make sure that your prayer cards will fit inside an envelope. And that's like 3.5 by up to 8 inches long. So, because this will hold an 8-inch size card, but this is 4 inches. So if you do a 3.5 card, it will fit in there with a newsletter. And from time to time, I always have missionaries that want to include that. So we'll send that out for you also. Let's quickly go over to the spreadsheet. Most of you have already done your spreadsheet. Are there any questions? Rather than me just going over it, are there any questions that you have regarding the spreadsheet at all? I think you've done a great job on everything. Yes.
Just
Amanda.
regarding the prayer card to send it to you to insert in the envelope, will it be the same price to send them, or because they are heavier will be more expensive?
Normally, it does not make that much difference in the weight, so it can still go out at that 17 to 18 cents. If it goes, I think it's like 16 ounces it'll go up to on that in order to get it out at that weight. So I never had a problem with including any prayer cards, even in a 4-page letter with a prayer card and a promise insert and a donation card. All of that still weighs and still goes out at that price as long as we have 200 pieces or more going out. And when I say or more, we have some missionaries that have 1,000, and I love getting their letters because it's a lot I have to do. But So as long as you've got that 200 pieces, and we do try to mix the letters to make sure that we can get it out at that price and not charge you the 50 cents a letter. If you go on Donor Hub, and I think Blake has talked to you about Donor Hub yet. If you go on Donor Hub and you click on Ministry Partner tab, you will see everyone that's on your ministry partners. Though Donor Hub is updated through our system. So as I update someone in our system, it updates Donor Hub. If you get a new donation and they're not on your ministry partner, they're automatically added and they will go over and you'll see them under Donor Hub. So when you click under ministry partner, you click under my list, that is the people that's on your list. And I would suggest before you send me a newsletter, you check that list to make sure you don't see anyone that's the name spelled wrong, that has moved and you know they're moved and you have a new address for them, or anyone that you want to add. Sometimes you've given me the husband's name and you need to add a spouse. So just email me that information to update, because you can't update Donor Hub. You just email me the information and I will update everything on there for you. If you see duplicates on there, which happens a lot, well, not a lot, but it does happen, just let me know which ones you want me to delete and I'll be glad to delete them off and make sure they're merged into one account. We do update our database with the NCOA, which is the National Change of Address with the post office here. So once a quarter, our database is sent through that process so that we get new addresses on anyone who's filled out that card that has moved. If they've moved and left no forwarding addresses, then they let us know that. So all the system is updated with all of that. And as you go on and look under your ministry list on Donor Hub, if it says invalid address, that means their mail is being returned. So if you have any information on them, please let me know. If you have an email address on them, that's why if you include that, then we can email them and let them know, hey, your mail is being returned, you forgot to update us, can you do that? We do send out year-end statements. We don't do quarterly or monthly statements. We just do year-end statements, a donor statement to every donor. When they give online, they get an automatic receipt. If they send by check, they won't get a receipt until the end of the year. But we send it to everyone. And do we have any more questions? Anybody? I think I've about gone over my time. Yes.
I think you guys will explain later, but it's regarding the Donor Hub. I have the Donor Elf account, and I will probably, move it to Donor Hub because you guys use Donor Hub, and I will not be paying for Donor Hub, and I'm paying for Donor Elf. So you guys are going to explain the transition, not the transition, but give a username and everything for us so we can work on that, right?
Yes. That comes from Blake more than me, but Blake will let you know your sign in, your name on there, and how to get in and look at your account. As far as merging what you have now, if you send me those names, that's how we get that onto Donor Hub. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, and Blake will send that.
So,
oh, sorry.
What I'm asked, I think, let me see. When I send you the spreadsheet, you guys are gonna put that into Donor Hub? Okay. So then I don't have to, okay, I will need to, but I will also have access to Donor Hub to change and to add addresses and stuff like that, right?
You will have access to Donor Hub, but you won't be able to change anything. If you see something that's in error, you send it to me, just email me, and I will go on there and change all of that for you. But right now it's a read only. You can see all the information, but you can't change anything. So you just send it to me and I'll update that for you.
What happens to those, sorry? What happens to those people, for example, with whom from whom we don't have like a, for example, emails, but just like a mailing address? Because at the video it says that, you know, that we need to have all informations, and if something is missing, then gonna have like a problem to put all the information in.
We won't.
In the system.
If you don't have an email address, that's okay. If you have it, it's awesome. The more information you give me, the better that we can identify a donation when it comes in. But if you don't have the email address, if you don't have the cell numbers, go ahead and send that to me. If you don't have the spouse's name, at least send me the one spouse that you have. The mailing address, I've got to at least have city and state or city and country to get them into the system. And if you can send me an email address, then we may be able to find a mailing address. Because I know a lot, especially if they're out of country. If they're in the US, then we can usually come up with a mailing address for them. But if you don't have their street address where they receive their mail, but you have the city and the country, or send that to me and I can get that in. I have to have a first and last name, though. I can't just say Mr. Smith. It has to have a first name and a last name.